5 Live Formula One.
Hello there and welcome to Abu Dhabi. We're at the Yas Marina circuit for the final round of the 2023 F1 season, and ahead of us the final practice session of the season and of the weekend before we get into qualifying later on today. Guiding you through all of the action is myself, Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is W Series race winner Alice Powell. And Alice, well, it's the final practice session that the drivers will get, but we really haven't actually seen or had much running. FP2 yesterday was the only representative session in terms of competitive order, because that's when the sun was starting to set and the lights come on around this Yas Marina circuit. FP3 and FP1 are done during the daytime when the sun is out. But of course in FP2 we had two crashes that brought out, well, at least one very lengthy red flag.
Yeah, we're used to having hectic practice sessions recently, aren't we? Vegas, obviously FP1 was cancelled and fairly hectic for the first 8 minutes, but 20 to 25 minutes I think was the amount of actual green flag running we got yesterday in free practice 2. And of course it was Charles Leclerc that was at the top of the times, closely followed by Lando Norris, and then Max Verstappen a further sort of tenth and a half behind. And Max said he's quite open, wasn't he, in sort of the interviews that he had yesterday after practice, that he said the car was just jumping everywhere. He said we got understeer. He said didn't expect to be this far off the pace. Really disappointed, got loads of work to do.
Jumping like a kangaroo, wasn't it? I think he said afterwards. Max Verstappen was also causing a little bit of trouble in the pit lane exit. There's a bit of a unique pit lane in Abu Dhabi where you head out the exit and then you head downhill and then you go through the tunnel that drives underneath the track, and then the pit lane exit rejoins on the left-hand side of turn 2 and into turn 3, the fast right-hander. So a little bit of a unique one. And yesterday, due to the lengthy red flag, being on track, very crucial for the drivers when they could get back on it. And Verstappen wasn't waiting around, and he decided to overtake the two Mercedes cars on the exit of the pit lane, crossing the white line and getting squeezed very close to the wall as they then went underneath and into the tunnel. At the time, technically, he wasn't breaking any regulations, but overnight, race director Niels Wittich, in his notes ahead of this weekend, has now said that overtaking is prohibited in the pit exit road unless a car slows with an obvious problem. So they've nipped that one in the bud straight away, Alice.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, didn't we, from our coverage, obviously we get the pictures that a cameraman had to sort of jink out the way because Max was ever so close to the barriers there on pit exit. He nearly made contact with the rear of Hamilton's car and the wall. It is fairly narrow pit lane there because you are going, like you said, Harry, underneath a tunnel in between two walls. So I understand why they did that. You know, it was only a sort of a free practice session. He would have gained, track position, which is obviously important, but he would have gained, 20 seconds, less than that if he was overtaking. Everyone's entitled to slow down. We actually saw him a few races ago where he stopped in the pit lane, didn't he, for 30 seconds, holding up everybody. But anyway, clearly he's forgotten that. But
drivers have short memories, I think.
Yes, they certainly do. I can agree with that one. And yeah, I think it's the right thing because it just makes it safer for everyone.
Absolutely, and safety at the end of the day is paramount within Formula One. It may be the final race weekend, but there are still scores to be settled. Max Verstappen has sewn up the driver's title. He currently has 549 points to his name, and looking to add to his wins total this weekend. If he does win the Grand Prix on Sunday, it will be his 19th win of the season, breaking his own and extending his own records. He has over double the amount of points compared to his teammate Sergio Perez, who lies in second with 273. He has sewn up second place, as has Lewis Hamilton, who is in third with 232 points. That is the top three. That is set in stone. Fourth place, though, very much up for grabs, and that is currently a fight between Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, who are equal on 200 points, and Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, who are a further 5 and 7 points back, respectively. So Sainz, Alonso, Norris and Leclerc all vying for fourth in the drivers' standings. And in the constructors, well, it's Red Bull who have, of course, sewn up that title. They currently have 822 points to their name. But second place is up for grabs between Mercedes and Ferrari, two titans of the sport. just separated by 4 points. So that is going to go down to the wire, as will the battle for fourth in the constructors. That's between McLaren and Aston Martin. 11 points between those two. Alpine a little bit on their own in 6th place. And then the battle at the back for 7th in the constructors between Williams and AlphaTauri. Just 7 points between those two. Now, it may only be for 7th, but that is quite literally worth tens of millions of dollars. Alfa Romeo are only 5 points back in 9th, and Haas currently in last place, a further 4 points adrift from Alfa Romeo. So if we get a bit of a topsy-turvy race, there is still all to play for, and that is worth a lot to those teams at the back, isn't it, Alice?
Oh, it's huge amounts, you know. I mean, it's worth a lot to anybody, but certainly for the teams that are fighting for these vital points, for the vital money that they can then put towards their future car next year, maybe the year after, depending on where they want to spend the money. But certainly helps a great deal, as we've got Lewis Hamilton venturing out of the pit lane now. The pit lane joins on the exit of turn 3, which is of course where we had that big accident from Carlos Sainz yesterday, and he said in an interview afterwards that he just bottomed out. He thought on track at the time that it was the dirty air from one of the AlphaTauris in front, but we saw from our pictures, didn't we, Harry, that he really just bottomed out so aggressively. Sparks flew from underneath his car, and that of course spat him into the barriers, but Ferrari have done a great job. The car is all repaired. Sainz is all okay, still currently in the pits, as majority of the drivers. Only Hamilton, Stroll and Alonso that have made their way out onto the track at the moment, but Ferrari will be pleased that everything is okay.
Absolutely. The sun is shining for the time being over this Yas Marina circuit. Air temperature 28.9 degrees, track temperature 43.7 degrees as they embark on the final practice run of the weekend around this 5.28 kilometre track made up of 16 turns, 6 to the left and 10 to the right. First came on to the calendar back in 2009 as the first ever twilight race, and since then it has become a bit of a favourite and has seen the ending of a Formula One season 12 times it will be this year. Of course, some modifications made back in 2021 to try and improve overtaking. We removed a couple of chicanes and widened parts of the track to aid that. And this is the sound of Fernando Alonso in his Aston Martin, making his way round turns around the final corner before he embarks on a final lap. And then we go to Lewis Hamilton, who now starts the final corner to start the lap, and we'll see the first competitive bit of action. He's out there on the soft compound of tyre, the two Aston Martins on the hards, and Sainz also out there as well, venturing out on the medium. No one else though in a massive rush to get out on the track.
No, they're not. It looks like the two Aston Martins, they've boxed quite quickly. They're on the hards compound of tyre, but we've seen them do this quite often, that they go out in this session, so FP3, if we do get an FP3 session, we don't on a sprint weekend, but they go and scrub the tyres. So basically you're just taking the shine off the top of the tyre, and they seem to find it better if they were to use it the next day, so tomorrow during the race, that their car is better suited to just taking the shine off the top of the tyre for when they hop on it next. But Lewis Hamilton is now joined out on track by the two Aston Martins who've got rid of those hard tyres, and it's Carlos Sainz as well that's out there on the medium tyre.
Sainz will be looking to get as much track running as possible, not only to try and secure fourth in the drivers' standings, which will be his best ever finish in a Formula One, but also to recover from that big incident in yesterday's practice session. Lewis Hamilton comes across the line. First lap time on the board is a 1:26.612 to go to the top of the timings, the 5-time winner around this Yas Marina circuit. And starting on pole here is quite crucial. So qualifying is really important. Since 2015, the pole sitter has won the race, and Safety cars are also a factor in the Grand Prix. There's around 60% chance that there might be a safety car, and in 3 of the last 5 there's been a virtual safety car. So strategy with how you play that, super important, but you've got to get the job done in qualifying. So Sainz, even though this is a bit of a less representative session, being in the daylight, as we hear the onboard sounds of the Ferrari as he makes his way through the left-hand bank turn 9 before approaching the right-handers of 10 and 11. Crucial as the sparks fly from the underneath of that Rosso Corsa Ferrari, slings it into the left-hander of 13, which breeds you into 14, very close to touching the outside wall. Go as close as you dare to carry as much speed as possible round the final corner for Sainz. The pit lane entry to your right. He stays on the track and he goes fastest on the medium compound of tyre, a 1:26.6. So just mere hundredths of a thousandth of a second between Sainz and Hamilton in these opening stages. But at the moment, not many cars out on track. The 2 Aston Martins have gone back into the pits. Leclerc has joined the fun along with Nico Hülkenberg, who's another driver who crashed in FP2, looking to get more running under his belt. And Sergio Perez in the Red Bull makes his way out onto the track.
Yeah, still all quite quiet, but as you alluded to us earlier, Harry, that this is a totally different time to when qualifying will take place later on today. Of course, FP2 yesterday was the most representative session that they will get to qualifying and essentially the race as well, but that was heavily disrupted. So the air temperature difference is fairly similar, really, compared to what we saw yesterday. However, it's that track temperature that's over 10 degrees warmer, and that is because the blazing sunshine is out in Abu Dhabi. As the sound you can hear is Charles Leclerc now, who's personal best in the first sector. He is also on the medium tyre, so Ferrari opting to run the mediums at the start of this session. He heads down the 1.2 kilometres straight, slams on the brakes and needs to send a postcard by the looks of it to the apex of the corner there at turn 6, very wide, but manages to get out of the corner okay.
So, I mean, it's all well and good at us saying this is an unrepresentative session, it's in the daylight. When we actually go for qualifying, the sun will be setting and the lights will come on around this track and it will be a night race. What can a driver learn in this session?
Well, you can still get the feel of a tyre. You acknowledge, and they're used to this over race weekends, how the track develops, the track evolution. This is one of the tracks that will evolve quite a bit. We have got support races here. We've had a Formula 4 session out earlier on, but that's about it. We've had some demonstrations run around, but they usually make the track worse than making it better. But you will still get that vital data. You will still get the data from long runs. You will still get the data from short runs, so all depending what they're doing. It looks like Perez is out on the soft tyre at the moment, so he's potentially doing some flying laps, some qualifying simulations. All that data certainly helps as he has to navigate Lewis Hamilton, who I wonder why Perez went that side of him. Hamilton was way off the line and Perez decided to go even tighter down the inside. We're riding on board with Perez now, but there's still vital data that you can get, Harry, and of course this is important as well for the drivers that did miss free practice 1. We had 10 rookies in, didn't we, yesterday? So Lando Norris said after free practice 2 yesterday that he would have liked a little bit more time because he missed out of free practice 1 for Pato O'Ward jumping in, the IndyCar driver, which did a good job. All the rookies impressed me yesterday, but still vital time. Track time is track time.
It absolutely is, and it's going well for Sergio Perez at the moment. That's the sound you can hear of the Red Bull round the final corner. Overall best in every sector. 1.1 seconds clear as he goes to the top of the times on the soft tyre. A 1:25.4 for the Mexican, 1.1 clear of Sainz, Hamilton, Leclerc and Hülkenberg, the top 5 times at the moment. The 2 Aston Martins have been out on track but haven't set representative lap times. Pierre Gasly is out there in the Alpine, along with Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo. The other Alpine of Esteban Ocon, and the Williams of Alex Albon has ventured out onto the track, just finishing up his outlap. Everybody else still in the pit lane. As I say that, Lando Norris Norris decides to venture out of the pits in his McLaren. He was one of the drivers as well, as you say, Alice, who missed out on the FP1 running, where we saw 10 rookie drivers take to the field in the odd scenario, actually, of both Red Bull drivers missing from FP1, as the reigning Formula E champion Jake Dennis took the place of Sergio Perez, and Isaac Hadjar, one of Red Bull's Formula 2 racers, took the place of Sergio Perez. Gasly crosses the line. He goes second fastest, 9/10 back from Perez though. Sainz still in third. Joe's come across the line in sixth. This is the sound of the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon, who gets up into the top five. And Ocon, who actually wasn't feeling too well in the run-up to this weekend, is obviously in the car, but off the back of an absolute mega result for Alpine, managing to gain 12 places in Vegas, climbed his way up to 4. But unfortunately for Alpine, it was a bit of a tale of two, as Gasly had such a brilliant qualifying but fell backwards. Yeah, Gasly was suffering from degradation. So he said after the race weekend, we need to look into why he got so much deg compared to Ocon. Many factors can apply to that. As Lewis Hamilton just avoids the back of one of the Aston Martins there, who was getting off the racing line out of turn 14, but it was a close call. We'll see if Hamilton comes on the radio, but he does improve, goes up to second place, still half a second shy of Sergio Perez. There's, as I said, a number of factors. Could be pushing on your tyres too early, not bringing them in the way you would have liked. Dirty air, sitting in dirty air. So numerous factors. Car setup can play a part in that as well. But he dropped quite a way down the field. Otherwise, it would have been a good result for Alpine. Lando Norris starts a lap in his McLaren. Unfortunately for him, his Vegas ended rather abruptly. I'd go as far as to say it's one of his worst weekends of the year, actually, for McLaren, and in particular Lando Norris, who ended a 21 race finishing streak by finding the barriers in the early stages of that Vegas race. But he's out there at the moment, nearly loses the back end over the bumps of that McLaren as he comes out onto the back straight, the 1.2 kilometre straight out of turn 5, which takes you all the way down to turn 6, up through the gears, getting up to speeds of 320 kilometres an hour before you slam on the brakes into the left-hander of 6, then the right-hander of 7, brings you out into the next DRS zone as the rear wing flap on the rear of that McLaren slides open as he heads down towards turn 9, the left-hander banked corner, which slings you round to turns 10, 270 kilometres an hour before you then slam the brakes, also while turning as well. So it's a really tricky corner, that turn 12, to get right, because it's so easy, Alice, to snatch a brake, particularly there, because you're coming at such huge speeds around turn 10, 11, and then braking and turning before you try and finish off the lap, which Norris will do so round the final corner, comes across the line. And what's it going to be for the British racer? Second fastest with a 1:25.8. Yeah, it certainly is. Turn 12 is probably one of, turn 11 into 12, one of the tricky sections of the track. And if you want to compare it to anywhere that we've been recently, it's where actually Lando went off at Las Vegas. What makes it so tricky is you're turning and braking at the same time. And when you want to apply a brake in a car that's got such downforce, you want to maximise the peak of the brake, and that has to be at the start of the braking zone. When you are going at the fastest, when that maximum downforce is... But it's hard to do it there at turn 15, because obviously if you slam on the brakes with steering on, you're likely to certainly lock the front and definitely unsettle the rear of the car as well. So you'll see probably quite a few lockups there going into 12. That unloaded tyre, so from a driver's point of view, it'll be the front right tyre, as we see Charles Leclerc now on for another lap. And we're seeing quite a lot of this, actually, is drivers doing a push lap, Harry, then having a cool, then having another push, and Charles Leclerc is doing that. He's on the medium tyre. We saw Lance Stroll do something similar. He is still on his cool lap at the moment. He's just been pipped by Lando Norris, so it's a good lap from Perez. Obviously we'll wait, of course, for Max Verstappen to come out, who's just still sat in the pits waiting for these drivers to maybe clear up the track a little bit, as
pops Charles Leclerc with a 1:26.0, so nearly 7/10 shy. Not a bad effort on the medium tyre.
No, 45 minutes and 20 seconds remain of the final practice session of the year. Sergio Perez in the Red Bull is currently fastest on the soft compounder tyre, a 1:25.4 in front of Lando Norris, 4/10 split them. Then comes Stroll, Hamilton, Leclerc, the top 5, Alonso, Gasly, Hulkenberg, Sainz and Ocon, the top 10, and Zhou Guanyu last of the time setters in 11th. We're looking for the Mercedes of Russell, who's currently in the middle sector, to come across the line, looking good for a lap in his Mercedes. But Sargent and Albon both in the pits for Williams, and we've not seen Ricciardo or Tsunoda, the two AlphaTauris, take to the track at all as Piastri finally ventures out along with Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. Here's Hamilton on the radio.
Just ramping up, yeah. Oh yeah, there should be a bit of track ramp.
So Hamilton, track ramp, basically track evolution. Is it getting faster? Is the pace going to ramp up? And it certainly is, because George Russell, who of course has waited a little while, purple sector 1, purple sector 2, so that means fastest out of anybody in those sectors. However, a slide there, a snap of the rear as he tries to eke the car into turn 16. Doesn't slow him down too much though. He pops to the top of the times, a good 2.5 clear of Sergio Perez.
Not a bad lap time at all, but what can Max Verstappen do? That's the sound you're hearing at the moment on his first proper lap. Coming through the left-hander of turn 9 at the moment is the Dutchman. Personal best sector 1, sector 2. It is his opening gambit, so it would be, but he's not going purple just yet. He's out there on the soft compounder tyre, which the majority of the drivers are on. A couple of runners were on the medium tyre, the two Williams and the Ferrari of Leclerc, but they've come back into the pits. Let's see what Verstappen's got though for his opening gambit around the final corner. A slight slide from the rear of that Red Bull. It's third fastest for the time being, a 1:25.662. So he's actually a couple of tenths shy of his teammate Sergio Perez at the moment.
That's a sentence you don't say very often, is it? But Lewis Hamilton, he actually changed his setup overnight, so he was out early just to try and make sure the feel of the car, how he feels with the setup. Obviously this is the last time really that these drivers will make those fundamental setup changes before heading into qualifying. He has a slight lock-up though going into turn 6. Now on DRS wide open and goes into turn 9, but yeah, that lock-up really cost him at 6. He did set a personal best in the first sector, but it's lost over 2 seconds in that middle sector.
Quite a loose rear. Sliding a lot.
Verstappen on the radio there reporting a loose rear, sliding a lot with his car, so still not quite happy there. Perez, his teammate, is currently in the pit, so I imagine Verstappen might well come into the pits at the end of this lap. He's currently making his way slowly through the middle sector. This is, I mean, again, it's hard to tell the competitive order right now, isn't it? But I mean, from what we saw in FP2 at least, it looked that McLaren, Ferrari both looked okay. Mercedes, particularly with George Russell's been fast from the get-go. And of course the Red Bulls are right there. Perez and Perez looking quite pacey as he has done in the last couple of rounds. Looks like he's perhaps regained that form we saw right at the start of the year. So one battle that we are watching in particular towards the end is that battle for second in the constructors between Mercedes and Ferrari, and right now it's looking nip and tuck and going a little bit more the way of Mercedes. I tentatively say that because it is only FP3, and I'm only saying only because it's hard to tell with these different conditions. Alonso comes across the line in 4th, but we could well get a nice battle here, and it is just 4 points, considering that gap Palace at one point was plus 50 in the favour of Mercedes. That's a massive climb up for Ferrari in the latter half of the year.
Yeah, how the tables have turned in terms of pace and battle for there in the Constructors' Championship. It's been a strong end, hasn't it, really, for Ferrari, but they have struggled with reliability as such, so they'll hope that this doesn't creep in. Obviously we had Charles Leclerc that's spun out. I remember we thought we were there in shock and horror, weren't we, that we thought he'd spun out of the Grand Prix before it even started, but actually it was a hydraulic issue for him at Sao Paulo. And then he was disqualified, wasn't he? So was Lewis Hamilton actually at Austin. But then there was retirements, of course, for Carlos Sainz. We'll say retirement. He didn't even start the race with a fuel leak at Qatar. So they'll hope that they've got all of that behind them, as they're looking pretty strong, it must be said, at the moment. Okay, they're sitting 9th and 10th, but they are on the medium tyre. As you said, Harry, majority of those are out on the soft tyre that have posted the time, and actually everyone that has posted time have done it on the soft tyre, or bar the two Ferraris. So it's a good battle, interesting battle. Okay, the championship battle's no longer in play, neither second place, but we've got that great battle for further down in the Drivers' Championship. That's the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th places, and of course that great battle that we're witnessing in the Constructors that you've told us many times.
I just love the battle of
several
seven.
races ago
Just
it was.
love
I
it.
remember Benny Benson was shaking his head, going, "Oh, not this Constructors." So go on, remind our listeners, what's this battle that you're so excited about?
Well, look, I'm excited because it is an important battle. It's Williams in 7th. They're only 7 points ahead of AlphaTauri. You're only 5 points ahead of Alfa Romeo. They're only 4 points ahead of Haas, and that's the battle for 7th. And we think there's around $9-10 million in between each position worth of prize money. So for those, I suppose they are the back marker teams. That's so crucial for them to go into the next season with in an era of cost cap when it is so tight. These ground effect rules coming in the last couple of years to try and level the playing field. Okay, unfortunately what we've got is a domination by one particular team, Red Bull. But if you look at the rest of the pack, it is incredibly tight, and we've seen in qualifying this year on multiple occasions around the shorter circuits. Here's Hulkenberg.
Some very heavy crosswinds on that straight here from 5 to 6.
Yeah, copy that.
Yeah, it's pretty gusty everywhere. The balance is really inconsistent and tricky.
Hulkenberg giving some feedback there, so getting quite windy with some crosswinds out on the track as the flags around the circuit blow in the wind, and this is the sound of Hulkenberg coming down the straight between turns 5 and 6 at the moment. So back to that battle for 7th. There's big money up the grabs here, but of course Jenny made a great point yesterday. It's not often those teams score big points in a race weekend. So when we say there's only 7 points between Williams and AlphaTauri, that is actually quite a big margin to overcome. But you can never quite write that off. We'll go back to Melbourne, where we had an absolute chaotic end to the race, and Haas managed to pick up a 7th place with Nico Hulkenberg. AlphaTauri have brought upgrades this weekend in a bid to take that fight to Williams to the bitter end. And Yuki Tsunoda has said, well, if these upgrades work, we're looking at perhaps a top 8 finish here. And you think, well, if Tsunoda and Ricciardo can both get a top 8 finish and the Williams struggle, then suddenly you've got a really, really interesting fight on your hands. And yes, I know it's not the headline-grabbing stuff, but it's still massively integral. And that's what Formula One, I think, is about, personally. It's about those interesting storylines throughout the grid. And at the moment, in terms of pace in this session, well, Albon, not too long ago in the Williams, got himself up into 7th spot. Sargent is in 10th, off the back, of course, his best ever qualifying in Formula One, 6th place on the grid for Vegas. The race, though, completely different story for the Williams drivers. Meanwhile, the two AlphaTauris have only done 3 laps between them. They are both out on track at the moment. Tsunoda's on an out lap. Ricciardo just starting a fast lap, coming into sector 1 now, coming through turns 2 and 3, in fact. So they were quite late out for AlphaTauri. So that's my reckoning behind why I'm excited around 7th place in the Constructors. I hope I've given you my evidence and explained it well.
You certainly have, as always, Harry. But as you touched on, Albon is up into 7th place, so it's going to be a tough ask, really. But we'll see what Ricciardo can do now. He's 2.5 tenths shy of the fastest first sector overall, and that is set by George Russell as he comes out of turn 7, down and past the support paddock pits. So Formula 2 will be based in those garages, and then on the brakes, nearly 7 tenths down now to George Russell, and that's not a great sign when Alex Albon is only 9 tenths off George in 7th place. Sargent down there and around about a second off in 10th place. But Ricciardo carries on. He goes under the famous bridge from turn 13 and 14 and then into the final corner. But talking about fastest sectors, Lando Norris, one that's certainly to watch out for qualifying, Harry. He's just gone fastest out of anybody in the first sector.
And this is the sound of Lando Norris up into 8th gear, making his way towards turn 9. The Ferrari in front of him gets out of the way. And that was Carlos Sainz, his old teammate, round the left-hander for Lando Norris. Actually lost a little bit of time in that middle sector, did Norris. It's not been a great middle sector, actually, for Lando Norris. So we'll see what he's got coming through turns 13 and 14. A double left-hander, which brings you right out to the exterior wall. Coming through 14 before you finish off the lap with the blind right-hander of 15, and the final corner of 16 crosses the line for Lando Norris. He does find time, about 7.5 tenths off at the moment though for Norris. He's 5th fastest with that lap time. On the soft compounder tyre, it was a 1:25.5 for Lando Norris.
Yeah, he'll be disappointed with that for sure, seeing that he was purple in the first sector. But it's Max Verstappen now who's just gone purple in the middle sector. Not bad first sector. So he's been in the pits, done some tweaks to the setup of the car, clearly, because he was still complaining, wasn't he, on the radio about the setup. Comes now into the tricky 11 and 12 braking zone. Managed to get the car stopped very nicely. Looks fairly tidy from the current world champion. Has to navigate a little bit of traffic. I think that might have been one of the Alpha Tauris that he was just going past. Swoops into the final corner, foot on the gas, and he goes up into second place. But still, a decent amount of time, must be said, adrift from George Russell, who Mercedes thought they were going to struggle this weekend. Okay, not going to get too excited, as Andrew Benson always reminds me. This is still free practice, so plenty of things can change, but still half a second shy of George Russell in the Mercedes, who's currently top of the times. He's
looked quick out the blocks, has George Russell, and he could tie with his teammate Hamilton in the qualifying head-to-heads this weekend if he out-qualifies him. So if he's able to convert that P1 spot at the moment to pole position, and then he'll equal with qualifying stats. And of course he took his Formula 2 championship here back in 2018, so it's a track he's got some good memories of, as George Russell, with 33 minutes on the clock, is fastest in front of Verstappen, Perez, Stroll, Alonso the top 5, Norris, Piastri, Albon, Hamilton, Tsunoda the top 10, Sargent, Bottas, Ocon, Gasly, Leclerc the top 15, Sainz, Ricciardo, Hulkenberg, Joe and Magnussen the 20 drivers. Only a few of them are in the pits at the moment, so it was a good lap actually from Tsunoda we missed to get up into the top 10 in his Alpha Tauri. So with that battle between Williams and Alpha Tauri, nip and tuck in the timings as it is. Sargent's on a decent lap at the moment, lost a bit of time in the middle sector, but found time overall to go 9th fastest, just behind his teammate, couple of tenths off of Albon. The two Williams currently in 8th and 9th. The two Alpha Tauri, Tsunoda in 11th, Ricciardo down in 17th. And it's actually a big weekend again for Alpha Tauri. It's the last race for their team principal, Franz Tost, one of the longest serving team principals in the paddock, has overseen Red Bull's junior program really in terms of training the young drivers in that Toro Rosso, then Alpha Tauri team, seeing the likes of Sebastian Vettel, Pierre Gasly, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, the list goes on. Max Verstappen, to say the least, go through the school of Franz Tost and then make their way up into the Red Bull team or elsewhere within Formula One. I think he's a bit of an underrated character, don't you think? He's delivered some of the best drivers this sport has seen in recent history.
Do you know what? He is 100%. He's one of those that's almost just carries on, floats on by. We talk about team principals all the time. Toto, obviously we've got Christian Horner, etc. And then we even talk about those lower down the field, but we don't really talk about him, do we? So I know that many people, certainly in the Toro Rosso team, careful. The Alpha Tauri team will certainly miss him, and he's certainly someone around the paddock that's hugely liked, so he'll be a character that's missed within the paddock. But I heard an interview with him that he's still going to watch every single race, He's still going to be working on Christmas Day, apparently, with other projects that he's getting going, whether he's joking or not, but apparently he was working on Christmas Day last year, so finalising deals for AlphaTauri. But he will still get given all the data and all the sort of inside analysis. He'll get access to the radios as well, so he'll still be there, sort of part of the team in a such, but he won't. He's just going to be one of those super fans that is just still heavily in love with the sport, which is actually really nice to see, because sometimes you'll get, you know, people that work in Formula 1 that go, that's it, I've done my time, I've had enough, don't want anything to do with the sport, but clearly not him.
No, well, if he does find a bit of extra time on his hands, and he's got all the data, I'm sure he can join us in the comms box at some stage to give his insights as well. But a final race weekend for Franz Tost, and actually a final race weekend as the team AlphaTauri. There's rumours of a name change which are coming.
Not another one.
I've heard Racing Bulls as the potential new name. They've got some new title sponsors.
If you had an F1 team, what would you name it?
That's a good point. Oh, you put me on the spot there.
No, I don't even know, so don't ask me the
Team
question.
Harry.
Oh my goodness, really?
What would yours be?
Team Harry.
AP. What was your number? If you were in Formula 1, what would be your driver number?
Number 27.
So you'd be Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, and the Villeneuve number as well, that stretches back, that I often get reminded on Twitter. Matt Bishop, ex-Aston Martin and W Series, of course. He often points out my number.
Team Powell Racing?
Well, I've got Alice Powell Racing, so it could be APR, couldn't it?
Oh, Team APR. That's actually got a bit of a ring to it, actually.
Yeah, I think that'd be... Maybe I could be one of these other teams that's going to tout with your millions, Harry.
Yeah.
Can you
I'll have a
back
chat.
my entry into Formula 1?
Well, me and Franz Tost are working on something over the winter, so we'll see what we can come up with there.
I'll let him have Christmas Day off, and he can help with my entry after that.
Yeah, deal done. Speaking of, Tsunoda's just coming around the final corner now, crosses the line, and the Japanese driver puts in a 1:25.8 to go 10th fastest, and he's running a tribute helmet to Franz Tost as well, who he really credits for helping him develop as a driver. Was one of the reasons why Yuki Tsunoda moved to Italy, closer to the Faenza team, to focus on his training and develop as a driver, so he owes a lot to him. 28 minutes on the clock to go of this final practice session. Russell is fastest, half a second I should say, clear of Verstappen. Piastri's up in third in front of Perez. Stroll the top 5, Alonso, Norris, Ocon, Albon and Tsunoda the top 10, all within a second. Then comes Sargent, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Bottas and Gasly the top 15. Leclerc and Sainz, who have been out on the medium tyre so far today, in 16th and 17th in front of Hülkenberg, Joe and Magnussen, the 20 drivers who have all set a lap time. This is the sound of Pierre Gasly making his way down towards turn 9. The DRS rear wing flap flies open, getting up to speeds of almost 320 kilometers an hour before you slam on the brakes into the left-hander of turn 9. Try and carry as much speed as you can through the banked left-hander, and then down from 270 to 100 kilometers an hour through turns 10 and into 12 as you see off into the final sector of this lap. Gasly currently down in 15th, is on the soft tyre. It's been a decent lap for Gasly. Ooh. Personal bests in sector 1 and sector 2.
Got very wide there though, didn't he, on the exit of 15. Got a little bit out of shape, and that's shown in his final sector. Yellow on our screens, which means that's not even a personal best, so he'll be disappointed. He does improve, but lost over a 10.5 to himself alone in that final sector. So
work to do then for Gasly. Who else has been a standout so far? The Aston Martins have been looking fairly stable as well in their fight with McLaren for 4th in the Constructors. Stroll 5th, Alonso 6th, and Stroll has actually put in a couple of good performances in the last couple of races, considering it wasn't long ago. We're all guilty of it, of talking about his poor performances. Suddenly Stroll's a bit more on the front foot. Last couple of race finishes for Stroll have seen him finish 5th twice in a row, and of course in Vegas made his way up from 19th on the grid up into 5th. And Alonso getting back on the podium in Sao Paulo, nicking it from Sergio Perez, quite literally on the line. Vegas, a bit more of a struggle after that incident in turn 1, but still managed to pick up a couple of points for Aston Martin. So it's a really interesting storyline, isn't it, this season, between McLaren and Aston Martin, where they started and where they ended. We always talk about how Formula 1 isn't just about the race on track, it's a development race between the teams as well. Not more so clearly displayed between McLaren and Aston Martin this year.
No, it's been, I think it's been a great display of these battles between the teams. Okay, of course, you're going to get many people that say this has been the most boring season, but actually, you know, I'm quite a die-hard fan of the sport, of course, and I have kind of enjoyed the battles that we've seen and the engineering development of the teams across the season, like McLaren, for example, obviously Aston Martin at the start of the year. So it's been impressive from where McLaren started in Bahrain. I mean, they had a shocking opening race, didn't they? To now see them where they are now. Obviously, Lando yesterday was second in free practice too, but they've done a great job of storming back up through the field. So I've quite enjoyed watching that element of it, Harry, to be honest.
I would agree with you, absolutely. Speak of Ferrari, the two Ferraris, Leclerc and Sainz, are out there still on that medium tyre, just putting a lot of laps on them. 16 laps for Leclerc in total, 17 for Carlos Sainz, and Sainz coming off to finish another lap around. So gathering some long run data for the two Ferraris.
Yeah, looks like it to me. Still vital data, all of course, which they missed out of in free practice 2.
Well, actually, Sainz is just coming through into turn 2, where, of course, he said there was a bit of a bump coming in then to the right-hander of 3. And there hasn't been a bump there historically, so it's something that's developed, it seems, in the last year or so.
Yeah, quite a couple of drivers actually said after free practice 2 that they feel that the track has got bumpier. And of course, the more it gets used, the more wear goes onto the track, then yeah, it will develop bumps. Certainly not the most bumpiest track of the year, that is for certain. Austin is one of those that is extremely bumpy. As well, just ask Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, their plank wear was reduced. I was like, that was aided by it being a sprint, but it's certainly caught some drivers' attention, and that, of course, of Carlos Sainz yesterday going into the barrier. But the sound you can hear now is riding on board with Fernando Alonso. Soft tyres bolted onto the Aston Martin. Nicely makes the apex there into turn 1 that was victim of Nico Hülkenberg shooting into the barrier on the left-hand side. As Alonso now charges down, exits sector 2. But he's 8.5 tenths off George Russell, Harry.
Yeah, struggling to put the power down as well, coming out of turn 5. Aston Martin bringing upgrades this weekend, mainly to the rear wing, getting up to 8th gear, hitting the limiter before he then applies the brakes. And he's out there on the soft compounder tyre, making his way through the left-hander of 6 and then the right-hander of 7 before getting onto the straight. Little alteration on the steering wheel, and he's not particularly pushing anymore, so Alonso backing off, has a little look in his mirrors as he comes into the left-hander of turn 9. And rumours around a contract extension for Fernando Alonso on the cards between himself and Aston Martin. I think part of the reason he made the move from Alpine to Aston Martin was because Alpine weren't willing to offer him a multi-year deal, and Alonso wanting to continue in the sport. And why shouldn't he? With performances, one of his best performances this season in quite some time. If he secures a top 5 finish in the driver's standings, it'll be the first time he's done that since, I think, 2013. He hasn't had a top 5 finish in the drivers since 2013. Of course, had some time away, the miserable years with McLaren, I think it's fair to say. But what a start of the year for Alonso and Aston Martin as he comes back into the pits and lines up outside his garage and lays some rubber down in the pit box.
Yeah, so that is just to make that grid box, or pit box should I say, a little bit more grippier. You do have support races come in there that will sit in the pits. We've got F2 race after this session, but laying a bit of rubber down to really make it grippy for that launch. And actually something that I was going to touch on earlier, these free practice sessions that we get across the weekend, they're able to do stuff like this, lay a bit of rubber down, all those kind of basics, go through the pits, just in case there's a VSC, just to get all the timings 100% accurate. They will do this on the sim, but it's always nice to do it on track, live on the circuit. But it's a test session for the mechanics as well. You'll often see when drivers come into the pits and they're at the end of a run and they're going to be wheeled back into the garage, they will do a pit stop. That is, of course, for the drivers to get used to stopping on their marks, but it's crucial for the mechanics to practice these pit stops, which play a huge role. They practice them during the weekend, where someone will wheel a car out into the pit lane. There's a designated sort of pit stop practice time on the timetable. They'll push the car in with a mechanic sat in it and they'll stop on the marks, but it's not the same as having a car coming in on the pit limiter, at speeds, which is usually the speed limit 60 kilometers an hour, does vary from circuit to circuit, and then stopping on your marks and having a real life car with everything that's warm, everything's hot, the tyres are hot, that adrenaline running. So it's an important time for the mechanics to practice as well, as we're just witnessing the two Alpines now. They're out on track on the soft tyre, and Gasly is improving.
He is made a bit of a mistake on his last fast run around. Ocon will come across the line first. His teammate round the final corner on the soft compounded tyre, and he moves up to second fastest for Esteban Ocon, just over 3.5 tenths behind George Russell. Pierre Gasly currently down in 15th. Good middle sector this time around. One more corner to go for Gasly as he comes across the line. Can't quite pip his teammate, but makes it an Alpine 2-3 as Gasly about a tenth off his teammate in third. Albon now also going quick in his Williams, fastest of anybody in the first and second sectors. Sargent also putting in some decent times as well, not quite as quick as his teammate, but both Williams turning the wick up with 18 minutes and 19 seconds left on the clock. Albon makes his way through the double left-hander of 13 and 14, gets so close to the wall on the exit, doesn't make contact, carries the speed through. Round the final corner, the right-hander runs on the red and white curving, doesn't exceed track limits. It's second fastest, a tenth off George Russell. Alex Albon gets up into second spot. Nice lap from the Thai driver. Yeah, very good lap, very handy lap. Sargent's out setting personal best in the first two sectors. He pops up as he goes across the line into P4. So decent effort from Williams, splitting the two Alpines there, does Sargent. So this is now, it looks like these two, or four drivers, these two teams, have started the chain of maybe some qualifying runs, a bit of lighter fuel. Obviously we've got 17 minutes and 26 seconds remaining of the session, as we see Valtteri Bottas now out on a fresh set of soft tyres. So I expect this order to start chopping and changing, Harry. Yeah, in these last less than 20 minutes. Hashtag BBC F1, Nulla makes a good point about the season as a whole. We are kind of in a bit of reflective mode, aren't we? Max's domination of the drivers' title race has been dull, but the season as a whole has had plenty of interest for me. Do you think that's a fair description of the season, Alice? I mean, yeah. We want to battle. No, we want to battle for the title, don't we? And if you look at it like that, it has been dull in terms of Max just dominating and go, oh yeah, Max has got a penalty, or Max is starting down in ninth, but we know he's going to come through to win. So in that sense, it has been dull. But yeah, as Lola said, there has been interesting bits throughout the season. We've already touched on it. So actually that's a good shout to our listeners to get in contact with us on the hashtag BBC F1. What's been your overall analysis of the season? What's been your highlight, or has it just been plain dull? What's been your highlight of the season as a whole so far? The one moment you could pinpoint. I really enjoyed Singapore. Singapore was
battle, and obviously George Russell unfortunately throwing it off at the end. Really enjoyed the race at Singapore, and not because of the time zone difference. I definitely didn't enjoy that, but Vegas, I did enjoy that race we had in Vegas. Again, some people still saying, oh, I thought it was boring, but we still had a great battle. Yes, if you take out Max winning, it was still a great race. You know, it was still a great battle that we had on track throughout, with some great drives with Ocon and Stroll coming on through. And after that, I can't really remember much else. My memory's not great stretching all the way back.
21 races
really
ago.
Long time ago. As George Russell now, we thought, wow, Albon's just a 10th off him. Not anymore. George Russell pops up a fast time. He was already in P1, but stretches his lead even more. Half a second now clear of Alexander Albon.
You stole Singapore from me. I was going to say that as a particular
you always
highlight.
Copy me.
No, but I'm just trying to think back throughout the season as well. I mean, there have been some good, like, go back to Saudi Arabia and when we all thought Perez was still in the hunt for this title, and he took the win there, and Verstappen started from 15th. I mean, you know, that got us all excited. But even, you know, then when it was all sort of unravelling for Perez around Miami, Monaco time, particularly Monaco, that qualifying lap from Max Verstappen, getting so close to the wall in that final sector, just a stunning lap to secure that pole position, and then that race between Verstappen and the rain coming down at Alonso and Aston Martin, making that call to come into the pits.
And Zandvoort was a good race.
The Zandvoort was a good race as well. That was one of the great races this year, actually. And somehow, and those races also highlight how, in this never-ending discussion about how much is it team, how much is it driver, somehow when the odds seem to go against Red Bull and Max Verstappen, and they're thrown everything, it's rain, it's strategy, it's avoiding incident, Verstappen's talent rises above, and he somehow always ends up back in the front and back winning the race. And that in a season of utter domination, where it's easy to kind of not talk about Max Verstappen almost because he is so dominating, that's where we've got to pick those moments and go, oh, bit of a slide coming out of the final corner for Norris, goes second fastest though in the McLaren as everybody's starting to ramp up the times. That's where I think Verstappen's real talent shines.
Yeah. No, it certainly does. As we're getting some lap times coming now, Piastri just slots into second. He's 4 tenths off his teammate Lando Norris. Slots into third, 4 tenths off Lando Norris in second. But Scarlett's getting in touch. She agrees with me. Singapore race, a podium in Singapore.
You're just reading out the ones that agree with you?
No, because Kaylee, she doesn't think it's been dull. She said people are comparing it to 2021. I think we touched on that yesterday,
we were spoiled, weren't we?
We were really spoiled in 2021. That was a great season, as we're getting a shot of Lando Norris going through the exit. Now the sound you can hear is us riding on board with him through 15 into 16. Gets a little bit of understeer on the exit, and then when he just applies that power, it kicks out the rear. Certainly lost some time doing that. He is just shy of a 10th off. Actually, some lovely 11s and a bit of tyre smoke to go with it as he crosses the line. But now we're ramping up, as you said, Harry. We've got several drivers improving on our timing screen. Alonso is one of them. Magnussen is one of those two. Several drivers on out laps as well, and all pretty much on the soft tyre.
Yeah, Joe Guan Yu as well on a decent lap. He's currently plumb last, so hoping to rise up the field in that Alfa Romeo, who were going very fast yesterday in FP2, one of the standouts at the end of that session. But of course, we don't quite know fuel running and fuel load throughout the practice session, so we can't always presume too much. Alonso continues on his lap around, looking neat and tidy for the Spaniard at the moment, who is currently down in 11th, looking to rise up through the field. 11 minutes and 20 seconds on the clock. Russell currently fastest, less than a tenth between himself and Lando Norris. The two McLarens second and third, with Piastri behind Norris, then Albon and Ocon the top five. Alonso comes across the line. He gets up into 8th with a 1:25.3 behind Sargent and Gasly. Verstappen on an outlap, then comes Stroll, the top 10. Perez 11th in the pits, Bottas, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Hamilton the top 15, Ricciardo, Leclerc and Sainz, who've mainly stuck to medium running and are currently in the pits, 18th and 19th, only in front of Nico Hülkenberg, who's out on a lap at the moment in the Haas. Zhou Guanyu got his Alfa Romeo up into 7th spot in what will be the last race for Alfa Romeo in Formula One. For the time being, their partnership with Sauber Motorsport comes to an end in preparation of Audi joining up with Sauber in a couple of years' time. We expect Sauber, or that name, to then revert to the Sauber F1 team next year, with a title sponsor expected to be announced in the off-season. So it'd be quite nice to see the Sauber name return in full view for a couple of seasons in Formula 1 before Audi join for the new power unit regulations in 2026. 10 minutes left to go then. And Verstappen just having to get out of the way of one of the Alpines coming through. I think it was Gasly coming through turns 11 and 12. Just Verstappen having to duck to the inside quite last minute to get out of the way of the fast-charging Alpine before Verstappen finds himself a bit of space on the track and gears up for a fast lap on that soft compound of tyre. New softs for Verstappen. So what's he got in the tank then as he makes his way down towards the left-hander of turn 1? Gets a little bit wide on the exit over the curbs. Car in front disturbing the air slightly through left-hander of 2. Right-hander of 3 approaches straight away before the run down to turn number 5. Used to be a chicane you had to negotiate before then. That was removed in 2021, and Verstappen is struggling in this Red Bull, struggling so much that he's backed out of the lap.
He doesn't look happy in that car. He just tried to get the car rotated for 5, and midway through the corner the car totally over-rotated, straightened himself back out up again, and then as he tried to apply the throttle on the exit to get that squirt out, that vital exit down the straight to 6, he got all out of shape. So no wonder he's backed off. He was already 2.5 tenths down to George Russell through the first sector alone. So a shake of the head from Max Verstappen, and we're just going to get a little bit of a replay now of him running wide, very wide actually, at turn 1, straight onto the Astro, and then a shot of the car getting a wiggle on in the middle and then on the exit. So I can imagine we might possibly hear some radio for Max. He wasn't particularly happy on the radio yesterday, and I can imagine his tone and his attitude is fairly similar on the radio today.
Verstappen and Red Bull then not happy as it currently stands. Verstappen in 10th, Perez down in 12th. He's also bolted on some new soft tyres and is currently on an out lap for Sergio Perez, so we'll see what he's got. And on cue, here's Verstappen.
Also the car is again bottling, jumping. I don't know what's going on.
What's Max Verstappen saying? He doesn't know what's going on.
That was calmer than I thought. Maybe he's had a good night's sleep. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't look great, in all honesty, to Max Verstappen. We know that he is a fantastic driver, and that Red Bull is usually on absolute fire. But not so much today, and the sound you can hear now is riding on board with Charles Leclerc. Will these Ferraris be the benchmark once again? Doesn't look like it at the moment. 2 tenths down to George Russell in the first sector is Charles, as he continues through in the second sector and heads now into the final sector. So we'll have a look, but he set the pace yesterday in free practice, but the way it's going at the moment, unless he really pulls it out in this final sector, Harry, he's not going to be at the top of the times.
Even as we were riding on board with Leclerc's helmet bouncing up and down, incredibly bouncy ride for Leclerc and Ferrari. He comes across the line on that soft compound tyre finally, and it's 5th fastest, nearly 7 tenths of a second off of George Russell. And in that fight for second in the constructors then between Mercedes and Ferrari, well, from what we can see, it looks like it's going slightly towards Mercedes' favour. Sainz is out there now as well. He's currently 20th and last, having been on the mediums along with his teammate for the session so far. Well, it's just over 6 minutes left. Now he's bolted on the Red Bull soft rubber and is making his way down towards turn 9. The DRS slams shut as he hits the brakes into the left-hander. He's about half a second off Russell at the moment. His teammate ended up being just shy of 0.7 off Russell. So let's see how hooked up Sainz can be coming through the right-hander of turn 12 into the double left-hander of 13 and 14, running out as wide as you dare towards the wall. One corner to go for the Spaniard. A big crash in FP2, not deterring him from pushing the limits, and didn't find any time. Well, he did, but not a lot. 1:25, 1.2, so he's actually lost a lot of pace around that lap. So we'll see what Sainz has got later on. But I think he must have made a bit of a mistake before we joined him then. And he got the rear kicking out slightly, but it was just a bit of a poor lap from Sainz.
He lost to George Russell, and this is in the final sector of the track, which is between...
Did he lose that all in the final sector?
Turn 9, all the way through to, obviously, the start-finish line. Yeah, he lost 0.8 in the final sector to George alone. So
it didn't look like he'd made any obvious mistakes.
No.
I thought maybe the first sector, we didn't see his first sector, but that was all right.
Trying to call everyone's bluff and go, yeah, we're struggling, or he genuinely is struggling as the McLaren team get to work. One of the female mechanics having a little look underneath the car. Great to see some more females in and around the paddock as one of the Hasses, and that is Nico Hülkenberg, shoots straight off at turn 1, makes no attempt to make the corner at all. So hopefully we'll have a look to see what happened there. That's where he crashed yesterday, just losing the rear on the exit. So here comes our replay of Nico Hülkenberg, and the car just sails sort of straight on. He tries to make the corner, and clearly didn't feel comfortable at all. Now Sound is riding on boards with Nico Hülkenberg, goes to turn in, just doesn't want to turn in, Harry.
Was that cold brakes, or what's going on?
Brakes were definitely cold, but we'll just check.
I love how he has to ask the team why he went off.
Well, there's nothing of a worse feeling. Well, the worst feeling is having no brakes, but obviously cold brakes, you just don't get that feel on the pedal.
Russell at time 24.4, and we are 0.2 slower sector 1 and 4.5 slower sector 3.
I don't understand, but okay.
0.2 off the Mercedes in sector 1, 0.4 off the Mercedes in sector 3. That was Charles Leclerc's radio, and he doesn't quite understand why the two Ferraris look like they are struggling for pace in comparison to their direct rivals this weekend for second in the constructors, Mercedes. And that lap from Sainz, that final sector, was
genuine then. Unless they're both...
well, Sainz can't be nearly 1.3 seconds off. He can't. Hey, I could be wrong. But he's 19th. Only ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Well, we'll wait and see. He's still out there on the track. He's not going for a quick lap at the moment, so he might be winding up for another one. He'll get one more in if he completes his lap in timely fashion. But either way, as the data looks right now, it's not going Ferrari's way. That was the sound of Stroll just getting a little bit affected by a Ferrari in front of him as he made his way on the exit of turn 1, had to run out wide over the red and white curbs, and the steering getting away from Stroll slightly, but he managed to make his way past. 2 minutes left to go then. Verstappen's back out there for another lap, makes his way through turns 1, the left-hander of 2, the long right sweeping turn 3.
They did a good job, by the way, in turn 3 for the bump. I straight now, otherwise I'll forget.
Understood.
So Leclerc there on the radio, referring to some of the work being done then, I think, on the bump that caught out his teammate yesterday and caused that big crash coming through turns 2 and 3. So Leclerc then, nice for him to give a little bit of positive feedback. They've obviously worked on that bump and smoothed it out as much as they can in preparation for today's FP3. And of course, qualifying later on today, which you can hear on 5 Sports Extra from 2 o'clock. And the race on Sunday, 12:45 on 5 Sports Extra. Lights out from 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, Leclerc's back out there then, trying to find a bit more time. Couple of tenths down as he comes to the end of the middle sector. Verstappen with a couple of corners left to go for him, with just 40 seconds left on the clock. Let's see what he's got. How high can he catapult that Red Bull? He goes 6th fastest for the Red Bull. A 1:25.1, 7 tenths behind Russell. So not quicker than Leclerc. That's the sound you're hearing now. A final corner to go. He was a few tenths down at the end of the middle sector, and he'll lose a bit more time coming around the final corner as well as the rear end steps out, and he doesn't improve his lap time. He stays 5th fastest. Okay, now Sainz is out there. Let's see if that pace is a genuine worry for Carlos Sainz and Ferrari as it currently stands. The big caveat, of course, is this won't be the kind of conditions we'll get for qualifying later on today when the sun is setting, the temperatures start to cool down and the lights illuminate this Yas Marina track, but he's 4 tenths off at the end of the second sector.
Yeah, personal bests though, but from that onboard we just witnessed with Charles Leclerc, the Ferrari didn't look particularly happy there as Perez jumps up to 11th place. Everyone now on track because, of course, they will be out to do their practice starts. Sainz is ever so close to the wall. He's got a little bit of traffic in that final sector. George Russell does move out the way, comes through. Where's it going to pop him up to? He stays where he is.
Takes the checkered flag as well, so Sainz won't be able to do any more laps. Stays in 19th spots. Troubling times for Carlos Sainz and Ferrari then. And we'll look forward to seeing what Ferrari have to say in between FP3 and qualifying later on. But that is the checkered flag out for this session. And nobody else finding too much time, apart from Kevin Magnussen, who's putting in a last-ditch effort and compounds Carlos Sainz's miserable FP3. And moves up into 19th. Sainz then will finish 20th and last. But he's looked quick from the get-go, has George Russell, and that Mercedes finishes FP3 in the final practice session of the year. On top, a 1:24.418, the fastest lap time, less than a tenth, putting him and Lando Norris. Piastri 3rd, Albon, Leclerc the top 5, Verstappen, Ocon, Sargent, Tsunoda and Zhou the top 10, Perez, Hamilton, Gasly, Alonso, Stroll the top 15, Bottas, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Magnussen and Sainz, the 20 drivers in the field. What did you make of that then, Alice? Your big takeaways from FP3 is now practice is done. Next up, it's the fast laps for qualifying.
It is. Could this sort of been qualifying? You know, this was quite like the look of this grid. I mean, didn't expect sort of Ferrari to be struggling like they are. Even Hamilton said before the weekend, didn't he? He said this is a Ferrari track. This will suit them better than what the Mercedes should. And we could probably say we got a taste of that yesterday, but wow, it's different now, isn't it? George Russell up there, nearly 7 tenths faster than Charles Leclerc down in 5th, and with the McLarens there, Albon in the mix as well, Verstappen down there in 6th struggling, so all to play for in qualifying.
All to play for qualifying, which will be up next, and you can hear that in full on 5 Sports Extra from 2 o'clock this afternoon. The fight for pole for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. George Russell ends FP3 in fastest. Ferrari will work to do. Join us later for qualifying. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.